Hello, and welcome to IEDU Day 13, Business Related English. Today we will be talking about meetings. The class objectives are to first go through some different kinds of meetings, some business etiquette, possibly some negotiating, agendas, taking notes, and some critical thinking skills that might be related with meetings. So, why do companies have meetings? Almost every job that I have ever had has had meetings at some point or another. Whether it was as a professor or whether it was as a dishwasher at a restaurant, which I had as a part-time job in high school. All of them have had meetings, and there are reasons why. First of all, in a business setting, I wrote email antics. What I mean by email antics is that you write an email, somebody answers it, they have some questions, you answer their questions and ask them new questions, and then they come back, and each one of these iterations takes a day possibly. The problem with this is that in a face-to-face meeting, this would take 5 minutes. So to stop playing email antics, which is awful close to phone tag, then you end up having a meeting. Also, when the meeting occurs, possibly you have more than just you and the person who's receiving the email. You have a whole team there, and so everybody understands what is happening. Phone tag is similar to email antics. When phone tag happens, what is going on is someone calls, and either someone is not in the office or is busy doing something in their office, and so they cannot answer the phone in the best manner possible. They could even be going to the bathroom when you call, and then you leave a message. They listen to the message. They respond back later. This is the same thing as email. If you can get a hold of the person, then you can actually talk it out without the meeting, but it's not guaranteed that you would be able to do this. And this is called phone tag. Also, there is a paper trail when you have a meeting, because during meetings, minutes are kept so that there is a record of what happens. So by keeping this record of the paper trail that's happening, you can actually follow the process that is happening in developing an idea or a business plan. It can also be saying who said what and what was discussed. So someone cannot come back and say, "You never told me." Well, if it was in the meeting minutes and the person was at the meeting, they were told. So a paper trail allows this. Also, meetings are face-to-face. What this means is that everyone is together in a room, 2 people or more, and so when you're talking to each other, there aren't the missed communication that can happen when you don't have body language included in a communication. Body language and gesture can carry up to 60% of the meaning, which is one of the reasons why videos are not as good as a face-to-face meeting. Also, meetings can be used to build ideas. Teamwork. What happens is possibly one person thinks of an idea, and then it goes to another person. This triggers a memory, or this triggers a new idea, and it's better than the first one. So the idea can bounce around and become exponentially better than it was. Also, you have everyone involved, not just one person making all of the ideas. And this is called building consensus. So everyone's involved and everyone agrees, versus having it be one person doing something on their own without checking with other people. These are 6 reasons why people have meetings. What does a meeting have to have? Okay, first of all, you need to set an agenda. There needs to be an order that the meeting is going to happen. So, As you're going through, set the agenda. I will talk about this more later. Number 2, beforehand, you need to know who is presenting and who are discussion leaders. These people will need to prepare more than a normal person who is just coming to the meeting. They need to have the topics ready and possibly some questions or a presentation to give. Next, the objectives. If you have a meeting without objectives, what happens is nothing will be accomplished. So you have to have a reason to have your meeting. Next, it is good before the meeting happens to set a time limit. This time limit could be applied to presenters, or to discussion, or to the meeting, the whole meeting itself. Many times in a business meeting, if an outside presenter is coming in, possibly to try to sell something, they are told they have 5 minutes to present. After 5 minutes, they are often stopped and told thank you, and we're going on to the next thing on the agenda. So this is why it's important when you make a presentation to know your time limit and to stay within it, or at least close to it. Another thing before you have a meeting, make sure that the proper people are invited. There's nothing worse than having a meeting about something and not having someone who needs to be there because no one told them to come. You also need to have a location, date, and time before you have the meeting. This is also tied with the invitation. You need to get this information out to people. Often, knowing some background information about the meeting topic is also extremely useful. And if there are any items that might be needed, for instance, an overhead projector and computer, then you can have those prepared before the meeting starts, rather than trying to go find them afterwards, which would waste everyone's time. So these are some things that you need to have before you start a meeting. What does a meeting have to have during the meeting? Number 1, everyone should arrive on time. This is important to the meeting because then you can start on time, which will allow it to finish on time. People are busy. They do not like having their time wasted, and so if you arrive late or someone arrives late, that person will actually raise anger from other people because they'll feel that their time is being wasted. Be prepared. If you're presenting, have your presentation prepared and on the computer ready to go once you get to once it is your turn. If you're the discussion leader, make sure you have the discussion questions ready so that you don't have to be thinking about them, or the topics of the discussion so you don't need to be thinking about them. Number 3, keep it concise. Concise does not mean short. It just means you say what needs to be said. So try to keep it as concise as possible to be able to not waste people's time. Following by this, participate in a constructive manner. Don't just say it's a bad idea without having a solution. Now, if you really believe it's a bad idea, maybe you bring that up, but be ready to be asked, what can we do better? Maybe you don't know, but maybe that was why it came out in the first place. Also, there are some things that cannot be changed. Bringing up problems about things that cannot be changed is not constructive. Make sure that someone is taking notes and prepares minutes from the meeting that can be reviewed by everyone afterwards so that they can remember what has happened. Also, the notes allow people who were not at the meeting, possibly people higher up the ladder, to see what was discussed in the meeting time. Also, assign actions to people, so make sure that people understand what they need to do before the next meeting. And probably keep a meeting effectiveness assessment going during the meeting so that you know whether or not you are doing what needs to be done. After the meeting, Well, after the meeting, well, we've got our minutes again. You took these notes during the meeting. You need to add them to an archive. There are different ways to take minutes. Number one, you could have someone act as a personal assistant who always does this, who maybe is not taking part in the meeting. The other way is to kind of elect someone or take turns to take minutes and then add them to the archive, possibly a department Dropbox or something similar. Record and post all of the decisions. This is a concrete record of what happened, so people can actually remember what happened at a later date. It is also a good idea to send the minutes and the recorded decisions out to everyone that took part in the meeting so that they can review them and make sure that the notes are correct. Assigned actions recorded so you know who was supposed to do what the next day, and follow up on these decisions and assigned actions. So check to make sure that people are actually doing what they were either assigned or volunteered to do. This is the basis of a meeting for before, during, and after. There are 5 general kinds of meetings. The first kind of meeting is a briefing meeting. Basically, what is happening here is someone is coming in and sharing information with the other people who are at the meeting. A briefing meeting is going to be held to make sure that everyone understands things. Usually in a briefing meeting, there will probably be some form of a question and answer period where everyone can make sure that they understood what was said. So in this manner, it is better than email because one person might answer a question and only send it to one person and not get that information spread to everyone else. The second kind of meeting is what I'm going to refer to as a business meeting. A business meeting is tied with the business of running a company. This could actually be money. This could be how things are going. So this could be monthly sales. This kind of thing would be a business meeting. It could also be a meeting between 2 businesses where the 2 are trying to negotiate and set up a business deal between the 2 companies. Number 3 is a planning meeting. This is a meeting where you try to get ready for the future by having people plan what will end up happening in the future of the company. So now this could come out of a business meeting where maybe the quarterly sales are trending downwards. So you have a planning meeting to find out what to do to help them go back up. Consultation meetings is when you have an outsider come in and work with you on a certain thing, certain topic that you have decided you cannot take care of in-house. Finally, there are review and evaluation meetings. This is also the yearly report type of thing for money for businesses, but it could also be reviewing and evaluating how well projects go for a team. And so that would be a review and evaluation meeting. You might have to attend all of these different kinds of meetings as an employee for a company. Some other types of meetings. Brainstorming session is just trying to make new ideas. Status updates is letting everyone on the team know how the project is going and making sure that everyone's parts are moving together towards completion. Damage control is when something bad happens and you're trying to find a way to make it as good as possible. It may or may not be made good. Personnel meetings would be about decisions about hiring or firing people. Pitch sessions would be when you have an outside vendor coming in to sell you things and they're pitching some new product. A pitch in the business term is when someone comes in and tries to sell you something. Shareholder meetings would be completely monetary probably and direction and future of the company, trying to get shareholders involved Also, shareholder meetings are where large elections, like of CEOs and things, would end up coming in. Finally, there might be a type of meeting about some type of startup company. So these are some other types of meetings that you might be involved with. I got these offline, there are 10 commandments of business meetings. So this is based on the Bible's 10 commandments of kind of laws that you should follow. These are for business meetings. Number 1, thou shalt always know what time it is. So you have to be aware of time. You have to not waste people's time. You need to start on time, and you need to finish on time. So the first commandment of business meetings is you always know what time it is. Number 2, thou shalt not forget the main reason for the meeting. Make sure you stay on topic. Once again, you might waste time if you go off topic by too far. So make sure that you keep talking about the why you are at the meeting so that you can actually get finished with that topic in a timely manner. Number 3, thou shalt remember the golden rule of meetings. Praise in public, criticize in private. So if you're having a meeting that is a private meeting, it is okay to do some criticism, possibly of a project, possibly trying to get other things going. But remember that if it is a larger meeting than just a small team meeting, you need to keep a positive outlook. So praise in public, so if it's in front of everyone, keep it positive. In private, one-on-one, you can criticize later. Number 4, thou shalt not convene meetings outside of normal business hours. It is very hard for people who work on a schedule to change their schedule to be able to come to a meeting at weird times. This could be outside of business hours. If it is a required meeting, they probably have a life outside of the company, a family, or possibly hobbies or things that might need to be taken care of. Number 5, thou shalt not use group pressure to log roll conclusions. What this means is if a group feels that, not everyone, but a group feels that that's the best thing, they don't push other people to take that conclusion because there is a chance it is wrong. Number 6, thou shalt not use meetings to destroy others' careers. So don't personally attack one person and that being the reason of the meeting. Thou shalt keep the personal and corporate distinct. There should be a line between your private life and your business life. And you should try to keep that distinct, so don't have a meeting that talks about personal issues too much. Try to keep business at business. Number 8, thou shalt remember that the best model for meeting is democracy, not monarchy. You should try to remember that part of the purpose of a meeting is a team. Now, teams may have leaders, but democracies have leaders. However, they should be listening to everyone's idea. If you're not going to listen to everyone's idea, then it should just be a decision. So when you're having a business meeting, remember to actually listen to what other people are saying. Number 9, thou shalt always prepare a clear agenda and circulate it beforehand. So try to make your agenda what you plan to talk about and let everyone know beforehand so that they can prepare for that meeting in a proper manner. Thou shalt terminate a regularly scheduled meeting when its purpose for being no longer exists. So, if you have a task force to develop a new product and that product becomes a real product, you should stop the meetings for the task force to develop the product. This is so that you don't have a many useless meetings running around and wasting people's time when they could be doing other things that are actually very, very productive to the company. etiquette questionnaire. Okay, let's just take a look through here and see what is acceptable and what is not. What do you think? And then probably which one is best. It is acceptable to call the boss by their first name. Probably not, but there is a caveat there that it depends on the boss. It is more formal to call the boss by their first name, but I would not go up to the president of Dongguk University and call him by first name. I would use Dr. Zhang. Number 2, what do you think? You should never socialize with managers after work. Never is a very strong word. There might be some times where you end up socializing with a manager, but it should not be about work after work. If a superior asks you to bring coffee for a visitor, you can tell them politely that that is not your job. Once again, I would not do this in front of the visitor because that will make your boss look bad. After you've done it once, maybe after the visitor has left, you might pull the superior aside and say that that's not your job and please don't do it in the future. But don't be so petty that you do it in front of the other person because you're guaranteed to make the boss angry then. Personal calls are acceptable only at certain times of the day. Probably yes, because you're supposed to be working for the company, so you should not be receiving personal calls unless they're emergency. Staying late at the office to finish your work is a sign of inefficiency? No, I wouldn't say that, because often companies have big projects that need to be completed, and you might need to stay to finish the work for that. If you do it all the time, maybe you're taking on too many other people's work. So I kind of would disagree with that. In meetings, it is advisable for junior staff to speak only when they are invited to do so. Once again, it depends on the boss, but a good boss would probably want to have everyone's opinion coming in because there is a chance that you want to build creativity and you want to get everyone's opinion involved. Next, it is okay to offer suggestions to superiors about how to improve the business. It depends on the superior. And it depends on who else is around. Now, if you're in a meeting that is planning things, then yes, you should be showing them how to improve the business. If it's one-on-one, or if the superior cannot deal with this, then it is not a good idea. There are many tales through history, one of them being Tesla and Edison, where superiors were not able to listen to people who were under them about good ideas about how to change the business. It is not advisable to have a romantic relationship with a coworker. Probably not. It is probably best not to become that way, because what happens is if you were to break up or you have a fight, then that fight would carry over into the workplace, and then you're not keeping your personal life and your corporate life separate. So it is probably best to not do that. So that's my responses to the etiquette questionnaire. You'll notice that most of them have a depends or some maybe involved with the answer. There isn't a hard and fast answer on this. And that's part of what you need to keep in mind. It's going to be dependent on the situation. Bad etiquette. Now, there are some bad etiquette things that you should try not to do. Number 1, if you have an RSVP, like for a meeting, respond to it. Failing to respond to the RSVP, which is an answer back, are you coming or not coming? You need to respond to that. Saying, no, I can't make it is all right. Number 2, failing to follow the dress code. If your job has a dress code, it is bad etiquette not to follow it. Even if you believe that t-shirts and shorts might be the best way to dress, if your company does have a dress code, you should follow it. Number 3, failing to arrive on time. Lateness is not appropriate. Use of bad language is also not appropriate. That is also bad etiquette. Now, number 5, leaving cell phones on. I'm not sure that that's necessarily bad, but at least change them to manner mode or mute them while you're in meetings or doing something important. Number 6, unreturned phone calls is bad etiquette. If someone calls you and leaves a message, you should return the call. Number 7, failing to introduce new people to those around you. So if you have someone who you know who is new to the setting, you should introduce them to the other people that are around them. This will help them fit in and feel more comfortable. Number 8, failing to speak to appropriate topics. So it is bad etiquette to talk about something that is not on the agenda of a meeting. Number 9, failing to yield respectful courtesies to others at the event. So make sure that you're respectful and you show courtesy towards other people around you, basically. Otherwise, you're showing bad etiquette. Next, negotiating is part of business. So when you're negotiating, what do you need to be able to do? First of all, be polite. There's no reason to not be polite. So don't get angry, stay nice, and it doesn't mean you have to agree, but you can politely disagree. Number 2, saving face. Understand that the person that you are negotiating with will need to have something to take back so that they don't look bad. So you don't want to make the other person you're negotiating with look bad, and that's what's meant by saving face. If your company has a policy, you have to follow the policy. If you're negotiating, if it is a rock solid thing where you can't bend on this point, you do not bend on that point. But you do need to remember there are 2 sides involved. Now, if your policy is not to bend on that point, but the other one's not bending on that point, you should go to your superiors and say, they won't bend on this point either, and they're opposite of us, or they have a different opinion here. What should I do? So make sure that you follow the policy, but there are 2 sides in a negotiation. Try not to build too much or too little dilemma into the problem. You want to try to get the deals done, so you don't want to have dilemma about what to do, but there should be some urgency, so there should be some problem, otherwise it's not really a negotiation. Next, agendas. As I mentioned before, this is what should be in an agenda. I believe it was on an earlier part of this video. First of all, make sure you have the topics for discussion. So if there's going to be a discussion, it is only fair to let people know what the topics are before you start the meeting so that they can prepare for those topics. Next, a sequenced list. You should probably cover the most important things first and then work your way through that list. If there are any presenter or discussion leaders, they need to be on the agenda in what order they're speaking and probably about how long they would speak for. And have a time allotted for each section so that you know that it is time to stop a discussion about a certain topic and possibly move it to a later meeting. Possibly, if it seems to be a major issue, have a meeting about that topic later, but get through the other items on the agenda. Taking notes. Finally, during the meetings, you do need to remember that you need a record. You have to take notes of a meeting, otherwise the meeting didn't really happen. It is documentation of who is supposed to do assigned tasks. It's also documentation of the finished work, so where is the project? And documentation of who made decisions. You need to have this documentation so that people can understand what is supposed to happen next and who is doing their work and who is telling them what to do. Also, if there's a voting record, it should be on the record about any votes if you put something to a vote. If it is a tie, if it is close, if it's close or a tie, possibly you would need to revisit this. If it's a landslide, probably that is something that would be decided by consensus. You should also probably have the pros and cons written about after the vote. So what was discussed on the side that won and what was discussed on the side that lost. This could be important in the future if that topic comes up again. The main points and the pros and cons should also be included. When you're having a meeting, you need to make sure that there are notes, and the notes need to be sent to everyone who was in the meeting to make sure that they agree with what was said in the notes. If you follow these hints from this video, you should be able to have a good meeting. Thank you, and this includes the meeting section of the Day 13 IEDU.